Well, good evening, everyone. I see there's still a few more people in the waiting room. It's just so great to see all of your faces. My name's Carlin Crowley, and I'm the provost at Ohio Wesleyan University. And the provost is just a fancy name for chief academic officer, not to be confused with provolone cheese or anything like that. We have an action-packed hour, and we're so excited to see you and to see your faces. We can't wait for you to get here, whether you're learning remotely or you're going to be here in person. So let me tell you a little bit about how this hour will run. What you have tonight is really special because you're going to get to hear from faculty members who are going to share with you something distinctive about their course offering this fall. And we think that that's going to really be exciting for you to see and to anticipate as you begin your learning journey with us. I want you to know that we have spent time over the last 24 to 48 hours answering your questions. And so after faculty speak and we hear from President Jones, we've thematized some of those and we will address the classroom experience, some questions about advising, and some student life or co-curricular questions. But tonight is really devoted primarily to the academic experience at Ohio Wesleyan. During the question time, if you have concerns that come up and need to ask them in the chat function, you're welcome to, and subject experts will answer them. And not to worry, we have a large FAQ at Ohio Wesleyan, and if you have a question, someone somewhere will have an answer for it, I can guarantee it. And then we'll tell you about what else is to come this fall and close. So without further ado, I want to give a shout out and welcome to President Rock Jones.
Thank you, Carlin. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you. We are looking forward to seeing most of you on campus within the next couple of weeks. I know some of you will be remote for the fall for various reasons, but we're really thrilled this evening to be able to visit with you some about what the fall will look like. It will be different from a typical fall semester on a college campus. And our faculty has been doing just extraordinary work over the summer to prepare for the fall semester. And I'm looking forward with all of you to hearing from our faculty this evening as they share with you the plans for the academic program for the fall semester. I will just add my word of greeting and turn it back to Carlin so we can move directly to the program. Carlin?
Great. So I want to introduce Linda Hall, who's the Associate Dean for Academic Performance. And she's going to introduce faculty by name and title and area. And the faculty are going to share at least one concrete example that's exciting about their fall teaching and the modality in which they're offering it.
Good evening, everyone. It's really nice to see you. I've been working a bit with the Sagan Academic Resource Center. We're looking at some of the responses you gave us in the orientation course. We're starting to figure out who your advisors are, etc. So I've seen lots of names, but it's exciting to see some faces to go with those names. And so I'll turn it over now to the faculty members, and I'll ask Professor Shayla Hankeson to go first.
Thanks, Linda, and hi, everybody. As Linda introduced, my name is Shayla Hankeson, and I'm a professor in the zoology department. I cannot wait to get back to the fall and teach new labs. I have such great ideas. But one of the things I was really excited and wanted to talk about today was this interdisciplinary course that I've been developing with colleagues across the humanities and across social sciences, and I'm in the natural sciences, called How to Change the World, Complexity and Change Post-COVID. Now, we all have a bit of COVID fatigue, so don't worry, this course is not just about COVID-19. Instead, what we're really excited about is that it uses that topic as a springboard to sort of discuss all of the things that have been brought up. So we'll start with a little bit about, okay, what is that? But how does that help us understand broader things like the ecology of disease? What does it reveal to us about how we build communities? How does it help us make a better campus and a better nation and a better world? So we're really serious about that title. And you can approach it from there's courses that you can sign up for that will have a common sort of aspect, and then also branch out so that you can approach those topics from the natural sciences, the social sciences, or the humanities. And so we're really just excited about that. We have both remote sections and in-person sections. And so it's something really new and different, and I can't wait to see how that gets started.
Thank you, Shayla. I'll add, some of you participated in the COVID course this summer, and what we've done is taken what we've learned there, and we feel that illustrate a lot of the things that we do best as a campus, which is to bring people from different disciplines together to look at complex issues. And so we're excited to give students the opportunity to continue in that process this fall. Next, I'll ask Bradford Sadler to tell you a little about what he's doing.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bradford Sadler. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I teach in the Department of Theater and Dance. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to speak with you all tonight and to share some of what I'm excited about for the upcoming semester. As a teacher of theater, I'm constantly aware of the need to strengthen our human connections. Creating a strong individual connection to each one of my students is a focus of my courses this semester, all of which will be taught in a hybrid model. To speak, for example, of my beginning acting class, I will be using both the Stanislavski and Michael Chekhov acting techniques to allow students to explore the creative and expressive tools that they possess, helping them to discover that there are ways and techniques to connect all of us in deep ways, even when we have to be physically distant from each other. I'm also excited to use interactive technologies such as Loom, Flipgrid, and Zoom to increase the frequency with which I'm able to provide my students with focused and individual attention to help them grow and prosper. In planning my courses, I'm finding that teaching in a hybrid way actually increases the number of available opportunities to provide my students with individual attention and feedback. And I'm excited to use all of the tools at my disposal to help them succeed. Finally, I wanted to let all incoming students know about a unique theatrical project that they can become involved with immediately in the Department of Theater and Dance. This semester, led by a recent alumnus of Ohio Wesleyan, Aries Harper, we will be producing Intersect, a show that will be student-generated and will give participants a space to express their individual reactions to the many upheavals that our society has gone through in 2020. By making our voices heard and by seeing those voices come together in a theatrical medium, will help to transform the individual's experience into the community's experience, allowing all of us to process together and be heard. Events like this are only able to occur in communities that possess a strong sense of openness, connection, and collaboration. And Ohio Wesleyan has each of these qualities in abundance. This production is in its initial stages currently, and if incoming students would like to be involved, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at my email address, which is bgsadler@owu.edu. Thanks so much for your time and allowing me to speak to you for a few moments.
Thank you, Brad. And next, we'd like to hear from Kira Bailey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kira Bailey, and I'm an assistant professor in psychology and neuroscience. I'll be working remotely this fall, so all of my courses will be a mix of synchronous meetings, much like this one, and some asynchronous activities and interactions like discussion boards and videos. Some of you may actually know me from taking Psych 110 online this summer or from the COVID course, so you kind of have a feel already for what I do. This fall, I've basically decided to overhaul all of my courses to focus on collaborative group projects that examine how the course material relates to major issues that we're currently facing. So a really great example of that is the laboratory in the Introduction to Neuroscience course. We're going to learn about the various techniques that neuroscientists use by examining research on how COVID-19 affects the brain and nervous system. And I know that we all know about COVID and respiratory symptoms, but this is going to be looking at it from a different angle, one that researchers are kind of on the cutting edge of understanding. So I chose this topic because of its timeliness, but also because the research kind of perfectly illustrates all of the different subfields of neuroscience and how they approach the same question. So during our synchronous sessions, I will guide students in activities that illustrate the different techniques and how we understand the data. And we'll also work together to develop hypotheses and design studies that would address the still unanswered questions about neurological symptoms of COVID. I'm also planning on bringing in scientists who are actively studying these questions, so the students will get to hear from the source, but they'll also have an opportunity to share the studies that they designed with those researchers. So who knows, you might get to be a part of the cutting edge research on COVID. But the part that I'm actually most excited about in this project is what the students are going to be doing with all of the information that they learn. So we'll actually be disseminating what we learn to the community by co-writing a blog that will describe a different technique and a different finding related to COVID in non-scientific terms each week. This is going to be an opportunity to take what we are literally learning in the classroom right now and helping our community understand COVID better. So I'm really excited about that part. And because of the pandemic, a lot of neuroscientists are working remotely from data sets from hospitals because it's too risky to be in the lab. Even when there's not a pandemic, we often collaborate with colleagues from across the globe. And we often do this in both synchronous and asynchronous ways. I, for instance, have a colleague in China who I've published 3 papers with, and I have not only never met him in person, but we've actually only ever communicated via email. And yet we've done science together. So collaborating with other scientists remotely is something that we don't normally practice in a lab, but it's a really important skill. And it's one that's going to be really relevant to careers in neuroscience. So I'm excited that we'll have this chance to explore neuroscience from a slightly different angle.
Thank you, Kira. And last but far from least, Marianne Lewis Cassado.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being with us. We're happy to have you and to be together. My name is Marianne Lewis Cassado. I direct the French and Francophone Studies program at Ohio Wesleyan, and I co-direct the Global Studies Institute and the Palmer Global Scholars Program. And before I talk to you about my classes, I want to tell you that we faculty had a surprise trial run, in a certain sense, in the spring. And certain things worked well and certain things we learned could be done better. And we have spent so much of this summer getting ready for the fall and making sure that we're prepared. And it looks like I froze. Can you all?
But we can hear you just fine, Marianne. Uh-oh. Well, we could hear you just fine. Perhaps we should move on and then revisit Marianne a little bit.
Great. Oh, thank you, Marianne. All right, to be continued. So that was really exciting. I'm ready to take all of those courses. We're going to turn now to address some of the questions that you presented to us over the last 48 hours. And I'd like to ask Ashley Beiser, who's the Associate Dean of Curriculum, who's thematized and grouped some of your questions so we can make sure to address them. Ashley.
Hi, everybody. I'm also really excited to have you back on campus. We've really missed seeing you in person and actually, getting to talk to our students. So, and it's always an exciting time to have new students come to campus and to get to know them and their families. So we're really excited to have you. So a lot of your questions dealt with a couple sort of key areas. One is sort of what to expect out of your classes this year. There are a lot of terms that are being thrown around that are like blended, hybrid, synchronous, asynchronous. And so what I want to do is just give you a little sense of what we mean by that. So it's probably easiest to start with what we're going to be doing that's the same as what we've always done, which is that we're going to be having classes in classrooms with professors who are going to be interacting with students who are interacting with each other. And that's sort of the core of what we do at Ohio Wesleyan University. Now, it's going to be a little bit strange and weird at times, right? So we're going to be wearing masks, and I can guarantee we're all going to look a little bit funny. We're going to be a little bit further apart, physically socially distanced, but again, maybe that's a good thing. No, but I think it's important to know that for the most part, classes are going to look a lot like what they've looked like in the past, which is that you have a lot of people who care very deeply about their subject matter, who were really excited to share that with you. What's going to be a little bit different is that we're going to be using technology in, a couple different ways. And so some courses are going to be higher tech, others will be lower tech. So for instance, I teach political theory. And so what we do in my classes is we read a lot of texts. And that doesn't necessarily change whether you're in a virtual environment or in person. You're still reading a lot of texts and talking about them and trying to make sense of them together. And so that's the same whether you're in a course in the classroom or not. As I said, I will be in the classroom. And so those courses are essentially what we're calling sort of blended or hybrid courses. And mostly what that means is that anybody who can't come to class can still participate. And that's really important because it's a key part of our Safe Campus guidelines that if students start to feel sick or anything like that, that they shouldn't be in the class. That's what we do to protect everybody else. And so to make sure that students, that we have continuity of instruction regardless of whether you're in person or not, you have to have a little bit of a hybrid element. And so a blended or a hybrid class is going to follow a set schedule. You're going to meet on campus, and you're going to get that same feel as a small liberal arts classroom community. And then what'll happen is if you can't be in class, or for students who are learning remotely, you'll have other kinds of activities and remote opportunities to engage remotely. Fully remote classes obviously are slightly different. But you still have the same kind of opportunities to interact with professors. They're still going to follow a set schedule with at least one required virtual meeting a week. And you're still going to have the opportunity to get together, although virtually, with your instructors and more importantly, with each other. It's a really important part of an experience at Ohio Wesleyan that you learn not only from people like me, who's a professor, but also from your peers, that this is sort of the key, this is an important part of what it means to be at a college like Ohio Wesleyan, and we want to make sure that you continue to have that experience. So, because interacting with each other and with faculty and getting to know you is why we work at a place like Ohio Wesleyan. If we wanted to have, big impersonal classes or other places that we could go, but I know, and I'm speaking for many of my colleagues now, that my favorite part of teaching at Ohio Wesleyan is that I get to find out who cares about what my students want to do with their lives, where they want to go, who they want to be, what they've learned already from their families, from their home environments, and what they're learning while they're at college. So we talk a lot about what's happening even in other classrooms. So what did you learn in Dr. Bailey's classroom? And then how does that apply when we're thinking about politics? And that doesn't change regardless of whether we're in person or not. And so faculty have been spending a lot of time this summer learning more about how to create connections with students in multiple environments. You've heard a lot about different kinds of tools that we'll be using, technological tools, but I think it's most important to know that we've just been spending a lot of time thinking about how to actually, mostly just work with you. That's why we're here. And so a lot of your questions in the had to do with that. What do I expect out of class? What is it going to look like? How am I going to get to know my advisor? You're still going to have advising meetings. You're still going to be choosing classes with your advising. So a lot of that looks pretty much the same as it always would. There were also a lot of questions about choosing courses and registration. So I think it's important to say we had some classes about whether remote students could take in-person classes or whether in-person students could take remote classes. The thing to know is that all of our classes are prepared for both in-person and remote students. And so whether you're a remote learner or an in-person learner, you can choose from any of the classes as to what you want to take. Now, you can't choose if they're already full or if they're at two same classes at the same time. So regular restrictions still apply. But it's important to note that one of the things that we do at Ohio Wesleyan is work really closely with students and their advisors so that you can choose a schedule that makes sense for you. And so I know that a lot of students want to know when they're going to have their exact schedule. And I get it, but also know that we've been doing a lot of behind the scenes work to adjust schedules. So we've moved courses into classrooms where they're going to fit better. We've been working to make sure that faculty are in the classrooms that they need for the technology that they need. And so we've been doing all that behind the scenes so that you have a set schedule that we'll be able to look at and pick courses with you when you get to campus. And again, we're going to be doing that as we normally do. So one student, one advisor, sitting with the schedule and trying to figure out what makes sense for them. Linda, do you want to say a little bit more about registration and advising?
Yes, thank you, Ashley. I was just getting ready to tell someone in the chat that I'll answer this in just a minute. So this will give me the perfect segue to try to address that question. I think in the questions that came in advance, there were two primary questions. One is, when will I know my academic advisor? You've been hearing those names are forthcoming for a while. We're getting closer is the good news. Next week, you should be getting information about who your academic advisor will be. In many cases, advisors will contact you directly, but some of our advisors have other commitments in the summer, and so you may not hear from all of them. And if you don't worry, they'll be here when classes begin to help you. Our plan is for most of our first year students to register for their classes on Monday, August 17th. We have a whole schedule of events for you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of that week before we start classes on Thursday, August the 20th. Each student will have an individual appointment with their academic advisor, and during that appointment, you'll have the opportunity to finalize your registration, to get your schedule set up and ready to go. We are looking closely at the materials that were submitted in the online orientation course that most of you completed this summer. There's still some folks who have not completed it. Please get that information in as soon as possible. We look at it very carefully. It helps us match you to an advisor who is going to know about your disciplines of interest. And so we rely heavily on that information and would appreciate it. The second primary theme in the questions that I encountered was, will you have access to your advisors over the course of the semester? And yes, I think that kind of builds on what Ashley was saying. Your faculty will be available to you. It might be available virtually, but they will be available. So will your academic advisor will be available for individual meetings when you need them. And we have a number of other support services. We have professional tutors in the Sagan Academic Resource Center. We have peer tutors in the Sagan Academic Resource Center. Our librarians are great reference folks. I'm leaving out one group, and I can't remember which one was the other one I was going to say. But our offices will all be open, fully functioning. They will be available. They will be available for individual appointments, individual conversations.
Thank you so much, Linda. Ashley, I wondered if you could address one more question in the chat, which maybe you talked about, which is how you find out which classes are which. Could you just reiterate that one more time?
Sure. So right now, first year students who are going to be remote learners are going to receive a list of all the courses that are being offered purely remotely. And as I said, you can sign up for those, or you can sign up for any of the other courses. You've already received information from through the orientation class that Dr. Hall talked about. And so all the courses that are available there are still available. And you'll be able to tell and sort of cross-reference that with the list of remote courses as to whether or not they're in person or remote. But you should be receiving that pretty soon. The main thing to know is that especially for courses for first year students, so 100 level courses, there's a lot of flexibility, right, in terms of the getting things into your schedule. So we have multiple sections of, you know, for instance, Econ 110, or which is our introduction to economics. And so if, you know, one section doesn't work for you, there's usually another one. And the good news is that pretty much everything counts towards a requirement when you're a first year student, right? Because you haven't taken anything else yet. And so the main thing to know is that there will be a list of fully remote courses coming to you, but we're still working with the same list of courses that you received in the orientation package already. And so you should already have put in your preferences and what you're thinking about, and that's what we'll use, as Dr. Hall said, to make a schedule that works for you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Before we turn to Dwayne Todd, our Vice President for Student Affairs, Marianne, it looks like you're unfrozen. Can we hear from you? She needs to be unmuted. Is that possible?
Unmute. There we go. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, great. Oh, the irony that I was talking about the lessons we learned from the spring and then froze. Hello, everyone again. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about two courses and two exciting projects that I'll be working on with students this fall. So one is a course about cinema and film throughout the French-speaking world. So I insist on the French-speaking world because it's so much broader than France. There are about 67 million people in France, but there's some 270 million speakers of French. And so when we're talking about these films, we're talking about films that are truly global in nature. And one of the exciting things we'll be doing is interviewing a French-speaking film director whose parents are from Senegal, but who grew up in the suburbs of Paris. And some of you may know that the suburbs of Paris are somewhat akin to our American inner cities in certain ways. And so often films that come from directors who grew up in these places can be real social commentaries and really make us think about the world in which we live in unique ways that Hollywood films might not necessarily. So I think that'll be a really exciting moment for the students to be able to speak to someone in the native language about film that they've been studying, to ask, educated questions about, why he chose to set up a scene in a certain way, etc. And then the other course that I wanted to talk to you about is a fourth semester French course that focuses on different kinds of reading and writing. And the reason I want to speak to you about this is because the course culminates in a portfolio project. And I also taught this course last spring. And so what we did was we pivoted to an online portfolio, and we will do that again. So students at the end, they work on writing 5 different writing samples in different modes of academic and creative writing in French, paired with analysis of literature that they're reading. And they get very detailed feedback, not just from me, but also from each other. So they get used to using each other as resources, and they get used to improving slowly over time. And what's really satisfying is that at the end of the term, they have this portfolio that has at least 2 versions of each of those 5 samples. And they often introduce elements of visual design, and they do presentations, etc. It's just a nice moment for them to have a personalized approach to something they've been building up to throughout the whole semester. So I'm very much looking forward to that, and I know that the students are as well.
Thank you so much. And while you were talking, you even got a chat question about global scholars. So you can look forward to that. All right, you have a number of questions about the co-curricular, your total experience at OWU. Could Dwayne Todd, our Vice President for Student Affairs, please address some of those?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Dwayne, and I'm thrilled to meet you and glad to see you on the call today. A bunch of things fall into the area that I'm supposed to address. So I'm going to kind of work through a number of questions that are in certain categories that might pertain to some of the questions that you either submitted ahead of time or that are on your minds. One of those is about testing. So viral testing, what's the latest with this on campus? How will it work, and that sort of thing. Viral testing is something we have that's a part of our plan for every student coming in. So all students coming to campus to learn in person, and that includes commuters who will be learning in person, will need to be tested for the virus before classes begin. Those tests were going to be antigen tests. It's a particular kind of viral test. Unfortunately, those test supplies are not going to arrive on time. As you may know, testing issues in the country are challenged right now with the volume, but we have decided instead that we'll do PCR testing. It's a different kind of viral test. The test is analyzed off campus in a lab instead of being analyzed on campus. So the test results take a little longer. They're not immediate the way the antigen tests are. But PCR tests are the most reliable tests that are out there to check for the virus. And And you won't notice any difference in terms of how the test is administered. So it's still a swab that goes into your nasal passage, and the sample, it's a nice way of saying what they're collecting. The sample will then go into a vial, and then that goes off to a laboratory for the lab technicians to analyze, and they will return those results to the university in 12 to 24 hours. So we're pleased with that turnaround time, and that will allow us then to notify students within a period of what their status is in terms of the virus. That does mean, though, that students will not know their status that evening unless they've been tested on their own, but before they come to campus. So we're going to have to institute another kind of measure to make sure that we're providing some additional protection until you know for sure, whether you're positive or negative for the virus. So when we come to campus for the first night, we're going to just ask people to kind of stay in their rooms, this is good roommate time, getting to know your roommate. That's what we'll call it. Roommate bonding time that evening. And we will make sure, food get taken care of. You don't need to worry about that. You're not going to starve that night. So we're still working out all those details, but we will have roommate bonding on the first night, and then we'll have our test results back the next day, and you'll know what the status is. If you're negative on the test, great, go forth, move on with the rest of the activities. Anyone who's positive then would need to be isolated for the period of time that they need to be isolated. That can happen on campus, or it can happen off campus. We have isolation spaces on campus. They are comfortable. We will take care of your food needs. We will take care of all your needs. Someone will be checking on you multiple times a day. And so you will not need to feel alone there. It'll be a little party, isolation party in the building where we're gonna prepare for you if you need to be isolated. So all of that will be taken care of. And I just wanted to update you about the testing, the plan at this point, because it has changed a little bit here. And we will keep you posted as things move with this. Other questions that have come up are things about the move-in time, the residential rules around who can come in and stay with me and visit with me and all that sort of thing. We are not locking down our residence halls for anybody else to come in. So it is okay for you to have a visitor. We're asking that you only have a visitor at a time. We would not like you to kind of fill your room with people. So if you're going to have a visitor, let's limit it to one visitor at a time. Of course, if that person is having any symptoms at all related to this, they shouldn't come in the building. And that's to protect your safety as well as everyone else around you. So, let's just do the things we need to do in terms of checking symptoms and using some common sense there. We're asking that nobody stay overnight. So let's not have any overnight guests. But it's okay if your family wants to come and visit you and pick you up and take you off campus and go eat somewhere or that kind of thing. We're not sort of, limiting your movements to the borders of campus. It is okay for you to leave campus with your family and that kind of thing if you need to. Some of you will have jobs off campus and that sort of thing. But here's what I would say also about that. It is everybody's responsibility to limit unnecessary travel and activities and things like that. I would just be careful and conscious of the fact that every time I, sort of leave campus and go off campus and mingle around, there's a likelihood that I could pick up the virus in some way and bring it back to campus. And so we all need to be extra careful that we're not taking unnecessary risks in that regard. Whenever you're anywhere that's on campus or off campus, we want you to wear your mask. You need to wear your mask. It's actually state law in Ohio right now. Wear your mask, stay 6 feet apart from people, okay? If we can all do that, we'll do a really good job of helping make sure that we can finish the fall term successfully and people don't get sick, okay? Other things about some questions of things like how will campus know about how we're doing? We will provide some updates on our website about what the numbers look like in terms of the virus. So you'll be able to see that, your parents will be able to see that. And we're not going to provide a notice every time, we learn of a case. We have protocols in place to make sure that those people get the care they need. But we will keep you posted, about how we're doing, so that you will have that knowledge as well as the university. What else will be open? Will lounges be open? Some of you are commuters, can I use a microwave when I'm on campus? Those kinds of things. We're not closing public spaces on campus. We are altering them in some ways. So we'll make sure that seats are marked with 6 feet of distance between seats. Please respect that, so that don't move signs around because you prefer to sit somewhere else. Let's leave everything where it is. But the signage is there to mark out what does safety look like in this space. So I ask that you respect that, and you'll know where you could sit safely. Microwaves and things like that, where they are, they will still be usable. The water filling stations will still be available too. They're going to be cleaned multiple times a day by our cleaning staff. Water fountains will not be usable. All right, so we don't want you slobbering all over the water fountain spigot and passing that on to somebody else. So only the water filling stations. So if you like to drink a lot of water during the day, bring a water bottle, and those water stations are all over campus. So you can just refill your own water bottle and have all you want. Some other questions that have come up, things like a liability waiver. I've seen a number of those questions today. We're not asking students to sign a liability waiver to be on campus this fall. We will be asking you to sign a pledge of sorts, which is not a liability waiver. Very soon you will get a link to an online course about safety in a pandemic. It'll take you 15-20 minutes to complete. It's interactive. And when you get that link, just do it as soon as you can. As you go through the course, you'll see some OWU content in there, and it'll be specific about our campus guidelines. We want to make sure all of you, understand what is expected of not just you, but of faculty and staff as well on campus to maintain a safe environment. And then there'll be a moment at the end of the course where you will read a commitment that we're all asking everybody else, each other, to make about adhering to those guidelines, those safety guidelines this fall. So you'll read that through, and then we ask that you just mark it at the bottom that you're committing to that kind of diligence with our guidelines. In terms of mask wearing, we are requiring mask wearing on campus in all public spaces when you're indoors. So when you are not in your private bedroom and you're inside, you need to be wearing a mask. That includes when you're visiting a friend's room. That's not your private bedroom. You need to be in a mask. And if someone comes to visit you, they're now not in their bedroom either, and you need to wear masks too. So the only time we're allowing people to not wear masks is when they're in their private bedroom with their assigned roommate, right? Otherwise, mask wearing is one of the most important ways that we can protect the other person as well as ourselves from contracting. So we will be pretty important sticklers on this. We want you to wear the mask. You will see us wearing masks. And when you're outside, you can take your mask off when you're not in the presence of other people. But if you are near other people, certainly conversing, within a group, it's just safe to put the mask on. And then, you're protecting the people around you and not making sure that you're not spreading anything. So become one with your mask. You will learn to love it by the end of the fall. And it is something that we're all going to commit to do with each other. Okay. I think that's probably the main things I want to cover at this point. There was a question about addressing the answer to the earlier question. What happens if roommates should the other roommate test positive? Okay. So the way that it works in terms of notification of someone who's positive is, the university will know when the positive test comes back. We will be asking you all to also monitor your symptoms every day. And that's things like take your temperature. We will give you a thermometer at the beginning of the semester. So you have no excuse not to use your thermometer. So use it every day. We'll give masks, we'll give you hand sanitizer, all that, a good little COVID kit. We want you to monitor that every day and let us know, through an app that we will have, if you have any of these symptoms. If it's confirmed that you have the virus, you will go into isolation, or your roommate will go into isolation. Or if you're symptomatic, where we think that you might be, at least you'll go into quarantine. They're kind of similar, but quarantine is usually for people who are waiting to know for sure whether someone's positive or not. The Delaware General Health District, that's the group that are county health officials, they will be notified when someone is positive or has symptoms in that way. And they will do their work, which includes calling that person and talking through, who have you been in close contact with? And then they will contact those people and say, what are your symptoms? What are you feeling? And they'll decide, should this person be tested, or we think they're okay? They'll direct us in terms of who needs to go into quarantine and who needs to go into isolation. So they are the experts about what possible contagion looks like with individual people, and we'll be following their directives in terms of who needs to be tested, who needs to go into quarantine, who needs to go into isolation. So if your roommate becomes positive, and you've been in the room together at night, chances are we're going to need to get you tested, and make sure that you're not positive either. So we will facilitate that for you. All right, Carlin, I think I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. I still see there are a couple questions that can be answered. And if I can have Elaine, the media office, pull up the FAQ. I'd like to remind all incoming students and parents about the wealth of questions that have already been answered here, and that will be really useful for you. So tonight, remember, this videotape will be saved if you want to go back and look at it, or anything in the chat, or talk to other students or parents. So you'll have that as a resource. And you can also use the FAQ. In the chat right now, I'm going to remind people of the point of contact list for incoming students. If there's someone you're not sure, I have a question and I'm not quite sure who can answer my question, remember, right there, we've got an answer for you. So tonight has been terrific. I hope you've learned a lot and gotten to get a sense of what's in store for you in terms of exciting classes and the total campus experience. President Jones, I think you have some closing comments for us.
Yes, thank you, Carlin, and thank you to all of you for your time with us this evening. A special thanks to the faculty for sharing with us so much about what the academic experience will look like this fall, whether in the classroom or in a remote setting. I find myself wishing that I were headed to the classroom all day, every day, based on the things that we've heard this evening. I know that there are a number of questions that are remaining in the chat, and we'll be doing our best to address those questions. And those that don't get addressed while we're still together this evening in the chat function will be addressed in the FAQ, and we'll send further information to all of you. One of the questions I saw asked, would there be a certain number of cases on campus that would lead immediately to a decision to close the campus? And I wanted to share with you that as we developed our plan for the safe reopening of the campus, we were able to share that plan both with the health experts at the Delaware County Health District and with the Dean of the School of Public Health at Ohio State University. That person agreed to look at the plans of 5 institutions, small colleges in Ohio. And one of the things that that person said to us was to be careful not to say exactly the conditions that would require us to close the campus, because that could change as we learn more every day about the coronavirus, and the number of cases on campus. The impact of those cases might vary depending on whether they're spread across the campus or are isolated in a single location. So it's an important question, and it's one that we ask ourselves every day. But on the advice of experts in public health, we're wanting to take this as day by day rather than providing an answer that might need to change over time. I wonder if we could share the screen for the We Are OWU slide as we prepare to finish our time this evening. Thank you. So I hope you've had a chance to see this information, and I wanted to close just by reminding all of us that as we come to campus this year, we're asking us all to be aware of the responsibility we have to one another, to the campus, to fellow students, to the faculty and the staff, When each of us does all that we can to follow the guidelines that have been set forward, we're caring for one another and we're caring for those who are more vulnerable. And we've developed this set of guidelines using We Are OWU. We ask that you wear your face covering. We know that when everybody wears a face covering, the likelihood of transmission of the virus diminishes dramatically. As Dwayne mentioned, we'll be asking you to monitor your health daily, to take your temperature. We'll all be doing this, and to answer basic questions related to, do you have a cough? Do you have shortness of breath? Other key symptoms. We'll ask you to avoid unnecessary travel. When you arrive on campus, we hope that you will stay on campus until we break just before Thanksgiving, so that we can we can be together on campus, but not run the risk that comes when people are traveling away from campus to other communities or other states or other locations. We'll be maintaining physical distance, so remaining 6 feet apart in order to prevent the potential spread of the virus. We want you to engage your peers in protecting the community. We should all be willing to reach out to one another, to hold one another responsible and accountable to the guidelines that we have set. And if we see someone who is not following the guidelines, let's gently remind them of the importance of the guidelines and the importance of the commitment that they have made to the OWU community. We'll ask you to observe university group size limits. Those size limits may vary as we go through the fall, depending on how the virus is progressing or regressing in our community, and we'll be providing information from time to time on what the appropriate size limits are at a particular time. Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands frequently. We've all learned the importance of 20 seconds to wash our hands. And then finally, use kindness. This is a challenging time for all of us. It's a time of uncertainty. It's a time of anxiety. It's a time when people feel fear. It's a time for us to be kind to one another as we care for one another. A part of that kindness is ensuring that we're following the guidelines. A part of that kindness is being empathetic with others who are struggling. A part of that kindness is the way in which we remind others of the importance of maintaining these guidelines. So as you prepare to come to campus and become a part of the OWU family, I invite you to reflect on what it means to say that we are OWU, and that when we say we are OWU, we are committing to one another. We are recognizing that we are all in this together, and that when we work with one another and care for one another and follow the guidelines, we have the opportunity to have an extraordinary fall on campus, even as our society continues to wrestle with this pandemic. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you this evening. I look forward to seeing you on campus very soon. And Carlin, I'll turn it back to you as we conclude our session.
That was great. I hope you all learned a lot and we really enjoyed spending the hour with you, and we'll see you soon. Have a great night. Take care, everybody.